My name is Claire Donovan, and before I begin this story, I need you to take a breath with me. Because what I am about to tell you is not just a memory. It is a wound that shaped my entire life. If you have ever been underestimated, overlooked, pushed aside, or made to feel like your existence was an inconvenience, then this story might echo something inside you. And if it does, leave a comment. I read every single one. And make sure to subscribe because stories like this, they deserve to be heard. Now, let me take you to the night everything changed. I always imagined my graduation dinner would be warm and proud and filled with the kind of love ordinary families take for granted. But life rarely gives us what we imagine. The restaurant was quiet that evening, wrapped in amber lights, glassware shimmering like small constellations on every table. My classmates were celebrating all around town, laughing, taking pictures, hugging their parents. And I was trying, desperately, painfully, to pretend that my family was just like theirs. My mother sat at the head of the table, drumming her fingers against her wine glass. My father checked his phone, half present in the way he always was. And next to them, my younger sister, Hannah, the golden child, the miracle, the one they always whispered about with pride. I tried not to stare at her too long. Every second I did, I could feel the unspoken comparison burning beneath my skin. The waitress set my plate down gently, smiling at me the way strangers do, unaware of the fractures hiding beneath polite surfaces. "Congratulations," she said softly. I thanked her. My mother did not look up. That should have been my first warning. But naive hope is a stubborn thing. We made small talk for a few minutes, the kind of strained, brittle conversation held together by obligation rather than affection. "So," my mother said finally, lifting her glass, "you actually graduated." Actually. As if the word alone could subtract the years of studying, the late nights, the scholarships I earned without anyone's help. "Yes," I said, smiling carefully. "I did." She exhaled through her nose, a quiet, controlled sound. "You know," she continued, "it is still unbelievable to me. You always made everything so complicated." There it was. The first crack in the evening. My father looked away. Hannah sipped her drink, eyes fixed on the table. I tried to anchor myself. "I worked hard," I said. "I really did." My mother leaned back. Other children work hard without drawing so much attention. I felt the sting, but what came next, nothing could have prepared me for it. The moment is carved into my memory with brutal clarity. She set her glass down, folded her hands, and looked at me with a coldness that felt rehearsed. "You know, Claire, sometimes your father and I wish you were never born." The restaurant noise faded. The clinking of plates dissolved. Even my heartbeat stopped for a second. People talk about emotional wounds like they are metaphors. But in that instant, I felt something inside me actually tear. My father closed his eyes, but said nothing. Hannah froze. The whole world shrank to the sound of my mother's voice, sharp, final, merciless. "You were never easy. You were never what we hoped for. And sometimes I think our lives would have been better without all the trouble you brought." I remember staring at my plate, the steam rising into the air, blurring my vision like the moment between dreaming and waking. I remember trying to swallow, but feeling like my throat had closed. My mother took a sip of wine, as if she had merely commented on the weather. No apology. No hesitation. Just truth, her truth delivered as casually as a passing thought. I did not cry. Not yet. Shock has a strange way of pulling the tears back, trapping them behind your ribs where they burn instead of fall. I stood up slowly, gripping the edge of the table to steady my hands. My mother raised an eyebrow. "Where are you going?" I could barely breathe. "I need air." "You are being dramatic," she said. But I walked away anyway. Because staying would have meant breaking apart in front of them, and I refused to give them that satisfaction. Outside, the night was cold. The street lamps glowed like blurred halos, and the wind pressed against my skin as if urging me to keep walking. I stepped onto the sidewalk, hugging my arms around myself, feeling both numb and painfully awake. And that was when the truth hit me hard, honest, undeniable. There was no version of my life where my parents would love me the way I needed. I was never going to be Hannah. I was never going to be easy. I was never going to be the daughter they wished for. And for the first time, I allowed myself to accept it. I do not know how long I stood there, staring at the headlights passing by. But I do remember one thought rising above the chaos. If I stay, this will be my life forever. A lifetime of shrinking, of apologizing, of trying to earn a place I was never meant to have. And then another thought followed, soft but powerful. I do not have to stay. Inside the restaurant, I saw their silhouettes. My mother speaking with irritation, my father sitting motionless, Hannah staring at the door like she wanted to run after me, but did not know how. The image steeled me. I was done begging for love. I was done trying to be enough for people who would never see me. A single decision took shape, terrifying, liberating, irreversible. I would leave. Not just the restaurant, not just the dinner, but the entire life they had forced me into. I turned away from the window, wiped my face with trembling hands, and stepped into the night. That was the moment everything in my life shifted. Not because of what they said, but because I finally understood I had the power to walk away from it. When I walked away from the restaurant that night, I did not have a grand plan. I did not have money saved, nor a place waiting for me, nor any certainty at all. What I did have was a truth so sharp it could cut through anything. I deserved a life where I was not a burden. The street was quiet except for the distant hum of cars and the faint music spilling out of open doorways. I walked without direction, letting the city swallow me whole. The cold brushed against my cheeks, but it felt cleaner than the air inside that restaurant. It felt honest. After a few blocks, my phone buzzed. Then again. And again. I knew it was my family before I even looked. My mother's messages were the first. Come back. You are ruining the evening. Stop acting childish. We have not paid the bill. My father's messages came next, fewer but equally predictable. Your mother did not mean it. Do not make this worse than it is. Come back. Please. And finally, Hannah. Claire, where are you? Please answer. Her message was the only one that made my throat tighten, because Hannah was never my enemy. She was the one who was loved effortlessly, and somehow, she still tried to love me too. But I could not go back. Not after what my mother said. Not after realizing they truly believed it. I turned my phone off and shoved it deep into my pocket. For the first time in years, silence felt like safety. I walked until exhaustion forced me to sit on a bus stop bench. The seat was cold metal, the kind that seeps into your bones, but I welcomed it. I needed something real to hold on to. A couple passed by, hand in hand, laughing softly. A group of students stumbled out of a bar, celebrating their own graduations with bright smiles and blurry photos. And then there was me, sitting alone, clutching the remains of a life that had just crumbled. I did not cry until then. The tears came slowly at first, slipping down my cheeks like they were afraid of being noticed. Then the dam broke, and years of swallowed pain came pouring out, every insult, every comparison, every lonely night spent trying to earn approval that never came. My hands shook as I pressed them to my face. People walking by gave me a second glance, the kind reserved for strangers in distress. But no one stopped. No one asked. Oddly, I was grateful for that. I needed to be invisible for a moment. When my breathing finally steadied, I whispered to myself, a fragile sound carried into the night. I am leaving. I am really leaving. Those words terrified me, but they also lit something inside my chest, a spark I had not felt in years. The spark of choosing myself. The next hour was a blur. I wiped my face, stood up, and made my way to the only place I thought might still be open, a 24-hour laundromat with flickering lights and cracked linoleum floors. It sat quietly at the end of a dim street, humming with the steady rhythm of machines turning and tumbling clothes that belonged to people with homes and routines and stability. I did not step inside to wash anything. I stepped inside because I needed a place that was not my home. The attendant behind the counter eyed me with a mix of curiosity and indifference. He said nothing, and I appreciated that silence. I found a corner, sat down on the plastic chair, and pulled out my phone. This time, I did not turn it on to read messages. I opened a new search. Rooms for rent near downtown. The prices were overwhelming too high for someone with almost no savings. I scrolled anyway, telling myself I would find a way, even if it meant taking the smallest room in the most cramped, overlooked part of the city. Then, almost as if the universe felt a shred of pity for me, a listing caught my eye. Room available. Low cost. Month to month. House share. No deposit required. It sounded sketchy. It sounded like the kind of gamble only someone desperate would make. But I was desperate. I wrote down the address and directions, then hesitated. Would the landlord accept me? Would it be safe? Would this choice lead me someplace worse than the home I was escaping? I closed my eyes. The answer came in my mother's voice, echoing viciously. We wish she were never born. My decision solidified. I gathered my things, though things was generous. All I had was my phone, my wallet, and the small purse I had brought to dinner. I left the laundromat and started walking again. The building was older than I expected, a tall, narrow townhouse with peeling paint and dim lights in the hallway. A woman in her late 30s opened the door. Her hair was messy, her sweatshirt oversized, and she held a steaming cup of tea in one hand. "Are you Claire?" she asked. I nodded timidly. "I am Mara. Come in." Her voice was unpolished but warm, the kind of tone that belonged to someone who had lived through enough storms to recognize another person caught in one. She led me upstairs to a small bedroom at the end of the hall. The room was bare except for a mattress, a nightstand, and a window overlooking a quiet alley. It was not beautiful. It was not comforting. But it was mine, or at least it could be. "It is not fancy," Mara said, leaning against the doorframe. "But it is clean. And it is cheap because I know what it is like to start over." I swallowed, my throat tightening again. I really need a place tonight." She nodded, like she had expected those words. "You can move in now. Pay me at the end of the week when you figure things out." I did not know what I had done to deserve her kindness. But in that moment, it felt like the universe had finally offered me a hand instead of another blow. "Thank you," I whispered. She gave a half smile. "We all run from something, Claire. You are not the first." When she left the room, closing the door softly behind her, I sat on the mattress and let the silence settle around me. For the first time in my life, I was somewhere my family could not reach me. Somewhere their words could not echo unless I let them. I pulled my knees to my chest, wrapped my arms around them, and let myself feel everything I had been holding back. Grief. Anger. Relief. Fear. Hope. A strange mix, heavy but honest. I was alone, but I was free. And that freedom, fragile and new, was the first step toward everything that came next. The first step toward becoming someone my mother would never expect. The first step toward the life I chose for myself. Living in Mara's townhouse felt like stepping into another world, one where silence was not a weapon, where footsteps did not carry judgment, and where conversations did not feel like landmines. The first morning in that tiny room, sunlight spilled faintly across the mattress, dust floating like soft sparks in the air. It was the first sunrise I had ever watched without hearing my mother's voice in the background. I sat up slowly, letting myself breathe without fear of who might be waiting outside my door. For the first time in my life, the air was mine. But freedom, I learned quickly, comes with responsibility. I needed a job. I needed stability. I needed to prove to myself that walking away was not an escape, it was a beginning. Mara helped me more than she knew. She handed me a cup of coffee and pointed at the local job listings taped to the kitchen wall. "Start anywhere," she said. "Life rewards momentum." I did not believe those words at first, but I held on to them anyway. They became a small anchor in a sea of newness. I applied everywhere I could: cafes, bookstores, small offices, even a grocery store a few blocks away. Some places turned me away the moment they learned I had no real experience. Others simply said they were not hiring. But on the third day, as I walked into a quiet cafe tucked between a flower shop and a thrift store, fate intervened. The owner, Elena, a kind woman with dark curls and bright eyes, hired me on the spot after I told her I needed a chance. Something in her expression softened, like she recognized a younger version of herself in me. "You look like someone who wants to build a life," she said. "So, let me help you start." Her words settled deep inside my chest, calming something raw and restless within me. Working at the cafe was the first time I felt truly seen. Elena taught me everything: how to pull espresso shots, how to steam milk without burning it, how to greet customers with a warmth that did not feel forced. But she taught me something else too, that kindness could exist without conditions. In the weeks that followed, my life transformed quietly but profoundly. I saved every dollar I could. I bought secondhand clothes. I decorated my small bedroom with thrifted string lights and a few cheap photographs of city skylines. It was not much, but it was mine. Completely mine. And slowly, the numbness inside me began to soften. My family tried reaching out in the beginning. Missed calls, voicemails, messages from my father telling me to stop being stubborn, messages from my mother telling me I owed them a conversation, and messages from Hannah simply asking if I was safe. I answered only one: "I am safe, but I am not coming home." After that, the silence returned, but this time, I welcomed it. I built myself piece by piece, quietly, privately, without needing anyone's permission. Months passed, then a year. And with every shift I worked, every bill I paid, every small victory I earned on my own, the pieces of the girl who once begged for her mother's approval drifted further and further away. I became someone else. Someone stronger. Someone steadier. Someone who finally believed she belonged in this world. Elena promoted me to assistant manager. Mara became like the older sister I never had. And I enrolled in night classes for business management, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I wanted a future I could build with my own hands. Life was still hard, but it was honest.
And it was mine.
2 years later, everything came full circle. It was a rainy afternoon when the cafe door opened, and Elena called my name. "Claire," she said gently, "you have a visitor." I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped out from behind the counter. And there she was, Hannah. My sister stood in the doorway, rain clinging to her hair and coat, her expression pulled tight with worry. Her eyes scanned the cafe until they found me, and they filled instantly with tears. "Claire," she whispered, as if saying my name might break the fragile air between us. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. She approached slowly, like someone approaching a wounded animal. "I have been looking for you," she said. "For months." I hesitated. "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Because everything fell apart after you left." She told me that my mother had spiraled into anger, my father into silence. Their relationship had suffered, their home had become colder, harsher. And Hannah's sweet, innocent Hannah had been caught in the crossfire. "I tried to defend you," she said. "But Mom still refuses to admit she was wrong. She says you abandoned the family." I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. "Did she ever apologize?" I asked quietly. Hannah looked down.
"No."
She still thinks she was right. The sting of that truth was sharp, but not unexpected. My mother had always lived in a world where her beliefs were facts, and her feelings were law. But then Hannah reached across the table and took my hands. "I came here because I want you in my life," she said through trembling lips. "Not because Mom wants it, not because Dad wants it, but because I do." The sincerity in her voice cracked something open in me. For so long, I had been running from my family, but I had never been running from her. We talked for hours about school, work, our childhood, the things we had both endured silently. By the time the rain stopped, something had shifted between us. We were no longer sisters bound by circumstance. We were two women choosing each other despite the fractures of our past. Before she left, Hannah hugged me tighter than she ever had. "You built a beautiful life, Claire," she whispered. "I am proud of you." The words landed softly, healing wounds I thought would never close. My mother never apologized. She never reached out. She never acknowledged the harm she caused. But here is the truth: I have learned some apologies will never come, and waiting for them only traps you in the very pain you escaped. I chose to move forward. Not for her, but for me. 2 years later, I opened my own cafe, a small space with warm lights, shelves filled with books, and a sign above the counter that read, "You belong here." Because I never wanted another person to feel the way my mother made me feel: unwanted, burdensome, disposable. This cafe became my way of breaking the cycle. My way of living a life rooted in compassion rather than cruelty. And sometimes, when the sun sets through the windows and the golden light fills the room, I think about that girl walking alone after her graduation dinner, broken, trembling, terrified of her own future. If I could speak to her now, I would hold her shoulders gently and say, "You were never the problem. You were the beginning." To those listening, if you have ever been made to feel unwanted, hear me clearly. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to build a life that makes you proud, even if it means walking away from people who refuse to see your worth. And if this story touched you, let me know in the comments. Share your thoughts, share your journey, share the moment you finally chose yourself. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and stay with me for more stories that remind us that sometimes the most powerful revenge is a life lived beautifully. Thank you for listening. You belong here.